Good morning. I am Tracy Hampson,
And I'm Nigel Stonham.
and you are Outside the Box. And we have a good friend of mine joining me today. We've known each other for a while, and I'm actually going to share behind me his picture, and that's Jim Baker. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Tracy.
Well, I tell you, it's so good, you know. One of the nice things about COVID is that it has brought me back together, in a sense, with old friends, because you and I have been old friends for quite a while now, haven't we? And in fact, were you not
a long while? Yes.
Were you not a consultant to NGGE? I think it's even in your write-up.
Yes, I was.
You was, and you are.
I was still in short trousers then when we met.
Yes, yes, it was wonderful. And this has been how I have always think of you, because of your picture. I have to get out of the way so people can see that wonderful picture of you. And I said at the time, what are you doing? What are you doing in that? Can you tell them what you're doing in that picture?
Yes, so I'm actually, it's my bubbles of fire, which I'm actually burning methane bubbles.
and why why are you doing that?
Why?
Yeah, why
Yes,
do you...
because that gives the wow to my lesson. Students learn only when they're having fun, and with me they have fun.
Excuse me, let's say that word again. With you, learning is what?
They have fun.
Fun. I love it. I love it. And you also made another comment to me when I asked you if you would come and talk on Outside the Box. And you said it ought to be kick the box. Something like that, right?
Absolutely.
Can you talk to us about kicking the box? What do you mean?
Yes, most people talk about you should be thinking outside the box, but if you're thinking outside the box, you are still constrained by what is in the box. So I kick out the box completely and start with a fresh canvas, a blank canvas.
Well, maybe we ought to change the name of the show, right? Because that's what we've been trying to do together for quite a while, isn't it? Talk a little bit about what you've been doing over the last few years, and you've been making quite an impact in education and the model of education and virtual education. Can you tell us some of the things that you've been doing?
Yes, so the reason I'm still active in education, I'm 73 soon. The reason I'm still active is that my passion is to repair the nonsense many call education. 50% of maths and science teachers pack up within 3 years. Were I the CEO of a company or organization that lost 50% of its workers within 3 years, I would seriously begin to question my motives. Therefore, I feel that government should begin to question what they're doing.
And how do we get them to begin to question what they're doing? I mean,
it's very difficult because the people, the teachers themselves, they question it. I've not yet met a teacher anywhere in the world that has not agreed with my ideas. The problem is education is run by politicians, it's run by people who have never actually taught in schools. And this is the problem. Education, the decisions in education should be made by the practitioners, the people that's actually in the classroom day in and day out. This is why schools threaten to send me home when the inspectors come in, because I would argue with them and get the schools a black mark.
I'm laughing because I can't tell you how often I have lost a job because of the way I believe learning and whatnot needs to happen. And but you know, I think, and what do you think, with the COVID right now, is that changing for us the opportunity to begin to change the picture of what learning looks like and how it can be delivered to our kids?
It is starting to change because it's having to be done online now. So materials need to be online for the students to learn from. And I believe that something like 60% of businesses after this will now be working online a lot more, because it's a plus situation. It's a lot cheaper, it cuts down travel, it cuts down pollution associated with the travel.
And so what do you see like coming? And first of all, you and I, we're not talking, you're from UK, right? we didn't say where you're from, but you're from the UK.
Yes.
And you have this problem there in the UK, this educational problem, and what's going on there. And I'm in the United States with huge problems.
The problems are the same from chatting to all my teachers. I chat with teachers literally from every country, and the problem there is always the same. The rules, how things should be done, are made by politicians, by rulers who are not interested in the education, the learning of the students. It's
what are they
often
interested in? What do you think they are interested in?
money, because over here, when I went to school, there was a head, there was a deputy head, and that was it. Now there are so many leaders in education that are not needed.
And not only in education, Jim, because education is so scripted to what it is the governments want the kids to learn, is it not also a form of controlling our learners and our people into?
It is.
Yeah.
This is why students are not enthused, because they sit there and are told what to do. They should have more control and say on how they're learning. And this is why my students tend not to misbehave as much as many, because they feel they have a say in how they're learning.
And maybe that kind of also, when you said you lose 50% of the educators or whatever, and what would happen to an organization or whatever that lost that many employees. When they do, isn't it because there's no, it's a top-down model and there's no buy-in and no consistency in movement forward, and so those who are not there just for the money, but because they believe in education and learning, they're the ones who are losing, aren't they?
Yes. I was.
So tell me what it is you're doing now. You wrote in a book that was published. How long ago was the book published? And can you refresh me on the name of the book, please?
I think it was about 2015. I was making some videos for GCSE. There were 7 chemists worldwide making these videos for GCSE, and one of the other chemists, Keith Ross, from the south of France, he was the main author of Teaching Secondary Science, and it had 3 editions. But after meeting him through making these videos, he wanted to make a 4th edition to bring it up to date, to include using computers and the web. So he asked me if I'd be interested in writing a chapter on harnessing computers and the web, which I did.
Which you did. Yes, that's
Yes.
right. Yes. So how, when you say you're making up these lessons, how long are these lessons that you're making up? And how do people access the lessons that you put up?
Well, the videos, they're open source, and they were made mainly for countries in Africa, because the guy that started this, he actually went over to Africa, because the Khan Academy videos last about half an hour to an hour, whereas our videos last between 2 minutes and 7. Therefore, they do not need as much bandwidth, therefore are accessible in countries like Africa that struggle with Wi-Fi.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. And I know that long ago we used to have access, because you were trying to teach me the platform that you were making your lessons on. Hey Jim, if it's only a 2, 3, 4 minute video lesson, would you share one of them with us?
Do you want me to do it now?
Well, we're talking
Right,
about
okay.
it now.
In fact,
It's interesting what you say about the 2-minute videos, because there's a gentleman I'm working with in Pakistan who is producing similar 2-minute videos in Pakistan for support of students through their exams, which is great. It's called Exam Bites.
Exam bites.
right. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, would you? And I'm going to
Right,
hopefully.
So, Twitterkit. So I'll access them through Twitterkit. Did you log on? Log in. So here we are, few school videos. These are accessible to anybody. So you can find a video on any topic for chemistry, physics, biology and maths for GCSE. So if I search for states of matter, as you can see, it's had about 500,000 views. Can you see the video?
In this video, you are going to learn what the 3 states of matter are, some
Yes,
examples of each state of matter, the characteristic properties of the 3 states of matter. The 3 states of matter are solid, liquid, and gas. Let's just look at solids. An example of a solid is your computer. properties of solids depend on how the particles in solids are packed. In a solid, the particles are closely packed in fixed positions and cannot move anywhere. So, solids are rigid, cannot be squashed or compressed, have a fixed shape and a fixed volume. They cannot flow. Now let us look at liquids. An example of liquid is water. Just as with solids, the properties of liquids depend on how the particles in liquids are packed. In a liquid, the particles are again closely packed, but not as closely packed as in solids. So this means the particles in liquids can move around each other. So, liquids are not rigid, but because the particles are closely packed as in solids, they cannot be squashed or compressed. They do not have a fixed shape, but they do have a fixed volume. Do away with that one, as many students think because liquids do not have a fixed shape. They do not have a fixed volume either, but they are wrong. If someone wants a pint of beer, they cannot make it 2 pints by pouring it into different containers. As you know, liquids can flow. Finally, let us look at gases. An example of a gas is helium. This is the gas in party balloons because it is less dense than air and unreactive. Again, as with solids and liquids, the properties of gases depend on how the particles in gases are packed. Unlike solids and liquids, the particles in gases are not closely packed. They are far apart. As a result, gases are not rigid and can be squashed or compressed. They don't have a fixed shape, no fixed volume. They fill the whole space they are in.
So that is the are we back?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
again, these are all open source.
Tracy, you're on mute.
Thank you. I said, Jim, did you use the Twittercate to develop those? That's
No, a Twidgicate is a platform where it's described as social networking for schools. So I can put all my material on there. The students I can have as many students and classes as I like. If there are 2 teachers that share the group, they can both share that Twidgicate class. I can put all the resources on there, and also if a student has a question outside of school, they can post it on there. I will get an email to say somebody's posted it, and I can reply to the student straight away. So the students are getting feedback when they need it, when the question is in their mind, not 3 or 4 days later when everybody's forgotten what the question was.
So as a platform,
Again, Twidgicate is free.
is it like Moodle? That kind of platform, like Moodle? Is it's another type of platform?
Maybe. Okay. It is another platform. I say it was developed by a friend of mine, Ray Blackney, who is a computer programmer in Mexico, and his wife is a teacher, and she was obviously asking him, can you develop something? And that's how it came about.
Well, it's very cool. So what are you making the videos on, and how did you make that video? It was clear, and you know what I liked about it, at least from my culture, maybe not from some of the other cultures, is that you used things that kids know. The balloon, the hot air balloon. I'm sure that's something all of the countries have, are the helium hot air balloons. So I liked how you were
Yes,
using.
I recorded the transcript. I then sent it from my phone to this company in London, and they had the animators that put in the animations.
Oh, so then you didn't tell them what to put in. They just followed from your.
Yes, I told them how it should be, because in a liquid, initially they put the particles too far apart, because not many people realize in a liquid 60% of the molecules should be touching. So they would then send it back to me, and all the other chemists, we would all comment on it, and until we got the final job, and then it would be published. So there are, as I say, there are free videos on every topic for chemistry, physics, biology, and maths for GCSE.
And so your sciences and your maths are on there. What about, are there
Yes.
things like for history, social studies, language, any of those kinds of things there as well? And can it be used for that?
No, there aren't, I'm afraid. I don't know why, but the sciences and maths do seem to have a lot more free material out there.
Ah, okay. So, but it can be applied to other subjects, right? I mean, do you see any limit to?
Yes.
Yeah. So, so somebody wants to make a short video like that. We don't have somebody to send our audio to. How can they make a video similar to that kind of thing? Do you know any platform or easy way to be able to do that?
I don't know, because we were fortunate in having a world-beating graphics team down in London that actually put animation to our words.
And Jim, tell me, you said that you talk with people from all over the country, and you also work and mentor them as well, do you not? You're a consultant. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about your consulting with and who you're consulting with, and sort of share some of that?
Well, in 2014, I trained a school in Cyprus on flip learning, and I'm going to share my screen with you again. And just over a year ago, I received this email from the head teacher of that school. So if I go to
flip learning is a term that's been around for a long time, and I'm not sure that people know exactly what that is. But can you while you're getting
back in the 80s, before computers, I thought it was silly me wasting my 1 hour with my students giving them information. So even back in the 80s, before the word flip learning had been coined, I used to give out notes to my students to look at and research prior to the lesson. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Now,
And speaking of the math and sciences, do you have just like high school level, or do you also have elementary materials there?
No, was material from the age of 5 up to 18. This is the letter. This is the letter that I received from
the school in Cyprus, and you know,
Maria, the head of the school. So,
yep.
if you like to, I mean, to me, that says it all.
We were hooked up at the time you were working with the school in Cyprus. So I'm writing to give you an update on the benefits of the flipped classroom practice. To start with, as I've shared with you, I should put my glasses on. In the recent past, it was difficult. As a concept, convincing change to both staff and parents, well, that's key phrase, was a challenge because people do not like changes, and certainly not anything that embraces more of a commitment. Having gone through the incredible change, we now find ourselves celebrating the outcome. This result came as a surprise to teachers who now find themselves able to set a task and concentrate on quality of knowledge. And concentrate on quality of knowledge. Students come prepared with questions. Oh my gosh. Because, you know, we say learning can't happen if it doesn't start with questions. Jim, this is great.
Absolutely.
Students come prepared with questions, suggestions, and even opinions on the task set. Whether the task is to look at a link, video, or research. I have recently observed a science lesson where students came back with responses and reactions to a video clip asked to look at home. Some were saying how awful the social pressures are on medical development. The passion that was so apparent, the leadership skills displayed, and the amazing conclusions they came up with was very impressive. This is because they did the thinking themselves. I'm going to just say that again. They did the thinking themselves. That's education. To me, teachers tell, educators ask. That's, wow. I went and lost my place. Parents alike can see the standard and engagement of their child's work and even have comments to bring into the lesson. Now you've got parent and family engagement. You've hitched in that spoke too. Wow. Thus, the concept works. It works because there is less time spent on repetition and information that a student can retrieve alone. This responsibility is great for their self-esteem. It gives them ownership of their learning and develop lifelong learning skills for future studies. Yeah, that's, and you know, whether you call it the flipped classroom, Jim, or whatever it is that picture is, that is exactly what learning should look like, isn't it? That's I love that. That's a brilliant letter, and it says so much.
It says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, and you know where my head's been for so many years too. The fact that we talk about how the spokes to the learning is lost. Kids aren't allowed to ask those questions, you know, and they're told everything, and so you turn them off and you cut off their curiosity. They come so curious, and we take that curiosity and that excitement for learning away from them. And there she's saying, flip it, and allow them. So what age are you talking about here, Jim? We certainly can't allow kids at 5 or 6 or 7 to be able to take responsibility for their learning.
That that was a private school that took students from ages 2 to 18.
Thank you. So in other words, you don't have to wait for high school for these things to be allowed.
Not at all.
Right at the beginning, shouldn't they?
It should start from the word go.
Yeah. When did you start working with them on flipping the classroom? 2000.
When did I what, sorry?
You started working with the Cypress School in 2012, you said?
It's 2014.
14. Okay. And
in fact, when most people, I actually watched a presentation online of somebody giving a talk about the flipped classroom, and all they did was to show slides. What I do is, prior going to Cyprus, I sent all my information to the students, to the staff, and to the parents, so they could actually read up about it prior to the lesson, in keeping with the classroom. So when I got there, the hour I spent with the staff, with the pupils, with the parents, was spent, they knew all about it because they read about it. The time was spent, as it should be, them questioning me how it worked.
In other words, you flipped the experience on them.
Yes.
Yes, you did. You modeled for them exactly what it was. And so they could
practice what I preach.
That's right. They have the opportunity to experience it, and then they understand it better.
So many people give a presentation and then at the end they scoot off because they do not like to be questioned. They feel threatened. Many teachers feel threatened. This is why teachers like to ask the questions, that they've prepared the answers for, so they look clever. They do not like to have open questions from the children in case they cannot answer them.
And what's interesting to me also is that they not only, teachers don't, kids have questions when they start, and it's documented, you know, how many times kids will ask a question, but by grade 4, they pretty much stopped asking questions anymore because nobody wants to hear the questions.
I mean, as you know, I also do private tuition for chemistry worldwide, and I always ask the students, why you're at a top school, why do you need tuition? Why don't you ask your teachers? The teachers don't like us asking. They come into the lesson, they put a PowerPoint on the board. If we don't understand it, we can't keep saying, "Sir, miss, could you stop? Could you replay that?" So you miss, certainly in the subject like science, you miss the first bit of the lesson. Then, because it's consequential, the rest of the lesson is lost, and they have no time to ask questions. So when I do tuition online, again, I do it by the flipped classroom. I create a folder for every student. I ask them what they are struggling with. I then create resources online, which I make available to them to look at, so that the valuable hours tuition with them, it is spent them actually asking me what they really should be asking the teachers in school.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's amazing. Now, I just want to clarify something, and that's the word tuition. Here in America, when I first heard that, actually, it was when I was in India, and somebody asked me if I would do tuition, and tuition is like, to me, what you pay money to go into something, but it's actually a form of tutoring, isn't it?
It is tutoring, yes. And when I've actually tutored people from Russia, Dubai, Spain, Canada, America, and obviously this country. And when people say, well, does this flipped learning work? I said, people would not pay me the amount of money they do if they didn't think it worked. You're not going to pay for something if you don't think it worked. And again, all you need to do is look at the comments in my guest book from parents.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. It's but what I liked with that letter too was she really talked about the fact that to really flip it, it wasn't just looking at the kids and the teachers, but also the parents and their involvement with.
It's getting the parents involved, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a I really that letter really said so much, I think, about the purpose of what learning is and the process that we have to go through, that it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight to be able to make it work successfully, but obviously the rewards in the end for everyone, I think. It sounds to me like it's not just the kids that are gaining advantage from it, but that the teachers and the families and in the long run community is also gaining from this kind of approach.
Yes, I mean, to give you an example, in 2017, I had a minor stroke and I was off school for a month. And one of my students sent me an email and said, "Oh, I'm very sorry to hear about your stroke, sir, but it didn't matter because the way you work, we didn't need you." That's, to me, that's it.
Oh.
Because if we did have any problem, or because we got all the work online, and if we did have a problem, we could just email you and you'd get back to us.
Well, I don't know, that's kind of good, that's kind of bad. Oh, you had a stroke, I'm sorry, but it's okay because we don't need you. Oh dear. Let's see if we've got anybody here who would like to ask you questions. And Nigel, perhaps you have. I see Abdikar is here, and that's wonderful to see. And then we've got Grace. We've got a few other people here. If you have a question, if you just raise your hand, and Nigel, go ahead.
Jim, thank you very much. Very interesting. I have a question, or I have a few questions. Firstly, you mentioned start as early as possible with flipped learning. And I just wondered how low you think that could go, because in Austria, where I live, we have a lot of parents who are homeschooling at the moment with their kids. And I'm just wondering how much support of a flipped learning basis could be offered to them.
Now, because these days there is so much free material out there online that the children could be asked, right, next, what we're going to have a look at tomorrow is this, and let them look at something online about it. And then tomorrow, when they're doing the homeschooling, they could ask the children, now, what can you tell me? What did you learn about what you read yesterday? Was it? And often they'll come up, well, I didn't quite understand what that bit was. And it's just getting them involved rather than saying, right, you'll sit here and I'm going to read you this book.
So that could work, that they watch the video beforehand and then they could have a large group Zoom discussion like this where the kids ask questions on what they don't understand.
Absolutely. And I say they can actually learn from each other.
Yes.
Any other questions?
That's a key. I mean, there was something else that you said, and I just lost it. But it was, the parents. The parents need to begin to learn to ask the kids questions.
It's very interesting because I was involved quite a few years ago with the Austrian online learning, and I had a look at the server in Linz, and it was quite frightening because there was so much material there that it struck me that in order for a teacher to try and select what they wanted to do to support a lesson plan, it would actually take them longer to find a relevant piece of information than to create the work from scratch in the old fashioned. So I think that's part of it takes a while to migrate to a new system, as you said in Cyprus. There's some resistance to change.
As there always is. But, you know, as they say, if you keep working in the way that you do, you keep getting the same results.
Now, I used to live with a teacher in the UK. I've been in Austria 21 years. You mentioned that one of the problems is education is a political thing run by politicians. It struck me years ago, perhaps education should be non-political and run by civil servants rather than a political flip-flop, one party comes in and changes what the other has done. Would that work?
I mean, it used to be run by the local education authority, and then we had a lot more autonomy.
Right.
When I mean, to give you an example, I mean, now a young teacher, their first years in school, their probationary year, they have to fill out a lot of forms, they have to do a lot of essays, etc., in order to get the box ticked to say that, yes, they now can be let loose to teach children. And and when I did teacher training, I thought I would have been sacked with my ideas, but I asked them when they were actually in teaching, how much of this teacher training year actually helped when you were out in the field there, in the class? And they said none of it.
Kind of like most of the education that our kids get today as well, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, to put things in perspective, before I did my first year in school, we were given a video to watch and sort of how to do it. It was in black and white in those days, and this little teacher came in. It was actually about my height. He stood in front of the class. The class were noisy. He kept coughing, but it didn't do any good. The video cut, and then this big 6-foot rugby guy came in. The class were noisy. He slammed the door, perfect silence. So when I started, I went into the class, but they were quiet to start with. They normally are thinking, who's this young guy in short trousers that we've got teaching us? So I thought, no, I am determined to try this, slam the door. So I went into the prep room, waited till they made a noise. I went back into the lab, slammed the door, and some glassware fell off a shelf above the door. So I thought, it works on the video, but it's this, you know, you've got to make what works for you. And my first year in training, I was observed once. I didn't have any essays or boxes to tick. I was observed once by my head of department, who was about 6 foot odd, red hair. He came in after a practical lesson, and he went to a bench, and there was a bit of water on the bench about the size of my thumbnail. And he sort of looked down at me and pointed at this drop of water. He said, "We don't like to see this here, lad." No, sir. He called me lad for 6 years. I had to call him sir. And then at the end of the year, the county science advisor came in. The head of department was Don Avey. I have every respect for him. And the science advisor came in and said, "Don, this new lad you've got for chemistry, what do you think?" Oh, he said, "He's a bit short. He struggles at getting the bottles off the top shelves, but I think he'll be all right." And 50 years later, I'm still here. Yet the the younger teachers that have all these essays and that to fill in, they're lucky if they last 3 years.
Yeah.
What does that say about the current system compared to the system
And
when
what does
I
that,
started?
how does and they are teachers. You are not a teacher, Jim. You are an educator, and I clearly
Yes,
think
I
there
don't
is
like the
a
word
difference.
teaching. If
There is
people
a
ask
difference.
what I do, I say I'm an entertainer. And in fact, one of the first comments in my original guest book was from a teacher colleague of mine, the physics teacher, and he actually put that he asked me if I was still blurring the boundaries between teaching and entertaining.
Oh, wow. Jim, you know, this
Yeah.
has been absolutely delightful, and you and we will all get together again. But I wonder, would you be willing to maybe do an hour session with us in explaining how the process of how to go about flipping a classroom? The steps and maybe some
Absolutely.
of the.
In fact, I've got all the materials how I do it to actually share with people on the screen.
Oh, that's wonderful, I think. And so we'll get together and we'll plan to do that and put that out there so that people who want to have kind of the experience and guidance from you will have that opportunity to join with us. Want to just
Well,
check
I'd just like to thank you for giving me this opportunity today to say how I think it should be done.
Hey, and you know what? You and I and the people who follow us are of like mind, I believe. The thing is as I say, we need to become the line on Red Rover. We need to start holding our hands together and begin to build what's necessary for our learners to be successful. We need to do it on a global platform. We need to change the picture.
More and more people are taking note. I just wish the people over here would listen as much as the people abroad do, but everybody in all the countries say the same things as me. They are governed by, in fact, I was chatting to a friend in Tunisia the other day who said it's the same there. Apparently the French make the rules and neither the teachers nor the pupils are in agreement with how they have to work.
And it's interesting that you that you said, I wish the people here, meaning the UK, would listen and be more open-minded to change. And I gotta ask Nigel, how many times do I say that about the US when he comes and says to me, well, can't we get US teachers to do what? They don't see it either. Where is it change really moving? Africa is very interested, and Africa is making great gains in those changes, and Nepal, and those doesn't seem to be like United States and UK, necessarily get it, and I just don't know why they're so behind in their thinking when they're supposed to be so progressive in what they do. I don't know. And so can I just check with the people who are also in the room to see, do you have a question that you'd like to ask Jim before we close our show for the day out? Okay, I'm gonna mute you, Grace, I think. Okay, you're gonna have to unmute yourself because it's not, there you go. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll first want to give gratitude to Jim for his wisdom, because I've also tapped from his wisdom, his way of doing things, his way of thinking. And also he has always been there arranging rendezvous with me and struggling to work on me on how this online working it's been done, because it's something new to me. First, because I've not had the opportunity of having all the gadgets and what it needs to carry on all those online activity. Second, I just had a very shallow mind on how it works in such a way that when I hear anything related to electronics, I develop a serious headache. But I'm really grateful for that. I've been listening on this, Celeste. I've been listening on this aspect of the flip learning, which is very nice. But I have a worry. What's actually the place of the people who cannot first afford these things, like those in Africa and all over the world? How can they actually benefit from this flip learning when they don't really have the possibilities of getting the tools for it? So that's a question.
Yes, this is the problem in a lot of countries where they do not have the infrastructure. They do not have the Wi-Fi, even if they've got the tablets or phones. To be a top priority of government, because we are in a technological age, that a top priority of any government should be to provide free Wi-Fi access to everyone, because this is how people learn these days.
Particularly with COVID.
Wi-Fi now is as essential as bread and water.
In a sense, it
and
really.
Both the prosperity and the security of any country is dependent on the education of its youth. And this is why a lot of leaders do not like to have their youth educated, because they again feel threatened.
And there you have it. Okay, and it's nothing that anybody who knows me doesn't know. It's what I've been saying for years, whether I'm in the country or I'm not in the country. That's
so I'm surprised. I'm surprised with my ideas that there hasn't been a sniper out there with a silver bullet to put me down.
Well, you know, it's interesting, two things when I was in India. First of all, you know, some of the countries are withdrawing access or have access only at certain times, okay, for their people. So in fact, they are doing the reverse of what they should be doing. And again, it's because I believe it's the control issue. And when I did a workshop in India with a group of teachers, they all were in support, all wanting to do, but not a one would take the risk to do it because, and I quote, education is in India is a business to make money, and that's what its purpose is and what they must do. Education is a business to make money. But I ask them, if it's a business and it's to make money, then shouldn't its output be quality? And if the output isn't quality, why are we paying that business any longer?
And in fact, I've spoken to teachers that have said that some teachers actually do deliberately do a poor job in school so that those students will then pay for them outside school to have lessons.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. Oh, Nigel, would you unmute? Nigel?
Yeah, Austria is a very interesting situation because there is they have morning school here, typically goes till 12 or 1 or 2. And there is a huge Nachhilfe industry, which is afternoon schooling, which is where I've said, tongue in cheek, that people are required to go to school in the mornings and they learn in the afternoons when they're when they're paying for lessons and in the afternoon school. And that you kind of said the same thing there, Jim, that maybe people are.
Yes.
But then if you're saying that education is a business, then logically that says supply and demand. If the business is not delivering results, then people will not pay for it. So if people are, and this comes down to my view of, I have said for a while that I think we've delegated responsibility for our education to the system, and as parents we need to take back responsibility for it, and therefore we will vote. And of course in the UK there's the private and the public system, that people have a choice and they tend to vote with their feet and their money. It's a very interesting area, education. It's one of my passions.
Well, I think it must be a passion of us all, because otherwise we wouldn't be here talking about it. And that's exactly what Outside the Box is about. It's about changing education.
Apparently, the fastest growing industry in the UK is private tuition. It never used to be. The reason it's private tuition is because the state system is doing such a poor job.
But how's homeschooling in the UK, Jim?
The growth of homeschooling has rapidly increased.
Right, because then you see, I discovered some years ago that 2 million children in America are being homeschooled, and that was 10 or 15 years ago. I was amazed, and therefore they have the option to opt out of the system and create something personal. And
when you're talking about homeschool, it's interesting. I'm just going to throw this in because we'll need to close. But on Tuesday, Peter Berg is coming in to talk with us. And homeschooling doesn't necessarily mean schooling in the home. There are schools that are have opened that learning and education happens in a completely different way. But for them to be able to go to that school, they have to sign out of the public school and say they're being homeschooled to be able to do that. Yeah. However, I think, and those are the good cases. Homeschooling, if you go into a lot of the places that are homeschooling families, what they do is they go to the grocery store and they pick up the workbooks that happen to be at that level, or they buy into a program that runs what it is that they're supposed to do. It's still very scripted and much like what the schools have had to do because of the COVID. Instead of helping parents be able to be creative and see where learning can happen and how it can happen, and really support them in that as well, and what homeschooling could look like. So, Jim, are you frozen again? No, I saw you blink.
Yes.
Thank you. I have to thank you so much for coming and sharing with me. We always have such a good time, and this was really a pleasure, and I learned a lot, and I hope that the people who are here with us learned something, and certainly once this video is released, that your knowledge will be touching so many other people. And we'll get together and figure out about doing a flipped classroom workshop.
The thanks is all from me for allowing me to reach more and more people.
Well,